Hey everyone, thanks for joining in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining. Quickly introducing myself. My name is Vedant. I work as a product consultant for Septus. We have products across, different divisions. We have a file solution which we are talking about, which is XfilesPro. We have a data archival solution, data archiver, and data connectiva, and we have a data backup solution. So today we are here for the webinar of Salesforce file archiving. We're going to talk about multiple things, which is related to archiving and how file management solution can be given. So along with me joining in is Sutirtha Roy. So Roy is also a product consultant and he's also my colleague. So over to you, Roy. Would you like to say a few words before we proceed with the webinar?
Hey Vedant, thank you for the quick introduction. And hello everyone. I welcome you all warmly to this webinar, and I hope you will having interesting information regarding Salesforce file archiving. So over to you, Vedant, for the webinar.
All right. So quickly setting up the next discussion timeline. So first we're going to talk about what are the sources? What are the sources the file is generated from? There could be multiple sources which we're going to talk about. And what are the challenges? What are the challenges we have seen our customers facing in every day? So that's our first line of discussion. The second is how to optimize a file storage, right? That's our next discussion. The third is solution, how Xfiles Pro is the best fit, how this solution will help you overcome the challenges, and how we fit in with this kind of scenarios. The fourth one is specific about this webinar, which is Salesforce file archiving, how we can archive like a large volume of files from Salesforce into your desired external storage, and what are the different points involved there. And the final, we're going to show you a quick demo and then run you through a customer use case. So first thing first, we're going to talk about a storage overview and a source of file generation. So Salesforce, as you know, provides a default storage, which is an org storage, which is 10 gigabytes. And then as you add more licenses, it gives you more users joining in. So more users and more storage. But that's still not enough, right? Because as a company, you can have multiple integrations, multiple ways a file could be generated. For example, you might have Salesforce apps, which can be generating so many of files, which is used for different processes, basically. You can have a third-party application, a third-party solution, like an app exchange solution, such as a TMS solution, aviation software, a financial services software, logistics software, any of that, solution that you can have could be generating files, like codes, like from load object, there could be some files coming in certain scenarios, right? Certain applications generating a lot of files on daily basis. You can have hundreds, thousands, ten thousands, lakhs of community users. And as you know, community users, as you add, Salesforce does not really give you a high file storage. So if you have an extensive file uploading community user, then it could be a scenario of file generation as well. Finally, there could be apps built on force.com. There could be a form assembly sending in files to Salesforce. There could be an email to case scenario, a web to case scenario. I could go on. So there are multiple scenarios where a file could be generated from multiple sources. So next is we're going to talk about some common challenges. Now we spoke about the sources, right? How the files could be generated. And I'm sure you guys have way more lot of scenarios than I have probably covered. Now we're going to talk about the challenge which comes with high file influx or high flow of files in your org. The first and the most prevalent challenge of unmanaged files is increased storage cost, because as you increase the files, the storage cost increases, right? Because Salesforce storage is not a very affordable scenario, as you know. It's not a very friendly scenario. So that's the main, we have seen challenges. We've also seen a lot of challenges with large volume files where arranging it, managing it becomes a major challenge. Uh, let's say you have, thousands, 10 thousands of files in a single record. Now, file visibility and accessibility is a big issue because Salesforce just lists them in a list view. So it limits your visibility and accessibility. On top of that, you cannot segregate the files into folders, right? You cannot have folder one, storing files related to folder one in under a record, folder two, folder three. That kind of structure cannot be done. You have to keep all the files together, right? And that's one more challenge we have seen with high volume of files. an unmanaged file, and finally, a file collaboration. Now, let's say an external user, which is not part of Salesforce, wants to see all the files, which is of a record, right? Let's say a loan record, right? And a customer or external user wants to see all the files related to that loan record. Now, for Salesforce, you have to probably give access to all the files outside Salesforce, share it, but it's still a challenge, right? Because he cannot probably given access to a folder where he can click on that folder and just see all the files. And that's where file collaboration also becomes a challenge when you have a large amount of file. Now, these are the challenges. And as I said, there are a lot more challenges that, we could talk about, but keeping the time in mind, I would like to go to next slide, which is, how can we optimize your file storage? We spoke about sources, we spoke about the scenario. Now we spoke about the challenges. Now let's talk about how can we optimize file storage, or what are the, integrations we have in terms of external storages. So we support SharePoint, OneDrive, Google Drive, S3, Dropbox, and the local local ones as well. So it is as you desire. Like these are, if you are using Microsoft integrations or 365, then you can use SharePoint or OneDrive, or you can use Google integrations such as Google Drive. You can use Amazon integrations, AWS, Dropbox, or on-prem. So that's a flexibility that we give in terms of the choices. On the same point, on the same lines, let's talk about how XfilesPro is the perfect solution for the challenges and for the scenarios which might come up. The first thing first, were inducted in 2013. So we have 8+ years of proven expertise. We have been there for a long, long time as a veteran. So I would say we have a lot of experience. We have 300 plus customers, which is growing exponentially now. We have 20 plus Fortune 500 customers, which is using this application very, very extensively. We have 400,000 plus users licenses and 100 million plus files which has been uploaded, and every minute, every second, some kind of file is being uploaded through our application. So that's how dependable, that's how trustworthy the solution is. The second point is multi-storage support, where, as I was showing in the last slide, we support so many storages, Microsoft ones, Google ones, Amazon ones, and all of these, right? So we have a multi-storage support basically, which gives you so much options itself. Now, third thing is it's built extensively for Salesforce. It is built to support all kinds of Salesforce integrations that you might have. You could be using Salesforce apps such as Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Pardot. You could be using an App Exchange app. You could be using a custom solution. You could be using anything, a community portal, or a custom solution which has been developed by your own developers, which you are using. And as an application, as a component of Xfiles, it can be integrated anywhere. And that's where it supports almost all kinds of Salesforce integrations. Now, having said that, also it also gives advanced file management capabilities, such as it supports Salesforce community files. And as you know, the community files, you do not, even if you add lakhs, thousands of users, you do not substantially get a lot of storage increment, right? Let's say you have 5,000 community users, but Salesforce does not give you a lot of increment in storage. And that's where it could become a challenge. And that's where this solution fits perfectly, where even if the community user with the same experience or even better experience uploads a file, it goes and stores in SharePoint or Google Drive or OneDrive, any of your choice. That's where we integrate the community seamlessly. You can archive those files. There's which is we're going to talk about as well, which is the focus of this webinar. You can centralize the file management because they're going to be a single repository where the files will be. You can go there and see all the files. I mean, as if you have permissions, of course, but there's a centralized place where all the files will be. And you can structure file or folder system. You can structure as per your own requirements, structure as per your own scenarios, businesses, as you require. And the last one, and for me the most important one as a consultant, is faster ROI. Because whenever any customer comes to us, the ROI is always in mind, because they want to get the most out of in terms of return on investment. And that's the great news about this application. It gives 80-90% of ROI, threefold, fourfolds, fivefolds of ROI. And the good part is it's a quick ROI. It's not something that you have to wait and then you get it. Immediately as you start using the application, the ROI comes up to you. It's a quick setup. It's very quick setup. Like it's not even any much complexity. It's one time and very fast. It's easy to use and gives you a lot more features on top of what you're already using. And then it's highly customizable as per your business scenarios. So let's talk about what we have come up to this webinar for, which is archiving Salesforce files to external system. Now we have a very beautiful, very efficient, migration tool. You can call it archiving tool, migration tool, offloading tool, which is built specially to archive or migrate your Salesforce files into your external storage. Now we do initial, we could that could be used to do initial offloading from Salesforce to external storage. Now, how this tool is built is to handle any volume of files. You could have 50 GB of files in Salesforce. You could have 500 GB, 5 TB of files. Doesn't matter. It gives you a hassle-free experience, right? So usually, if you think about it, right, any kind of file migration or migration itself involves a project. You need an extensive team sitting on the other end of the storage side, one team sitting on Salesforce side, and continuous a project. But in this case, the tool is built to eliminate all those things. You just need an admin to just run it once, and then it's all automated. And that's where it's seamless. The experience is seamless. You don't have to have a huge team to manage the entire migration. The tool takes care of that. So that's where a hassle-free and seamless experience comes into play. And as I was saying, the entire process is not manual. I mean, one click and all of it could be, as I said, millions and millions of files could be gone into external storage with just a click. So this is how effective it is to make sure no manual intervention, no clicking, no buttons again and again is required. And you can also schedule it. Like, let's say you want to set up a strategy, right? You want to schedule it as you every day or every week, something like this. So you can also schedule the archiving jobs. And finally, if you have a scenario where files are coming from somewhere, let's say a third-party application, and coming into your native files and attachments, or files or notes and attachment, and you want those files to be immediately to be moved to SharePoint or OneDrive or Google Drive, we have a trigger-based archiving where as soon as the file lands in the native Salesforce files or notes and attachment, it immediately picks it up and move it to SharePoint or OneDrive or S3 or any external storage, right? So that's where this kind of scenario can also be used. So that's what I was telling you, that this application or this archiving itself can be used in so many ways, so many different ways, as per your requirements, as per your business. We could give you the right solution. Now that being said, let's quickly talk about how this application gives you a better user experience. XfilesPro being a centralized file management solution system itself. So first thing is this application stores files in a very structured way, as in you can you in let's say in external storage you're going to have an object folder, a record folder, and the files. You can have some subfolders. So it's very structured. If you see, it's so properly structured that anybody, even a non-Salesforce user, can go and find something in SharePoint or OneDrive or Google Drive or S3 or Dropbox, right? So it's so structured in a way in your external storage, also in Salesforce. So community, as I've spoken in length about community in this already in this webinar, right? That community users can upload a file which will automatically go and store in external storage. And best part is that they won't even find any difference. In fact, they could have an enhanced experience because this application gives so much more flexibility. But even if you don't want to use, and even if you want to keep the experience same, this application or this component that we have does that. It an external community user will never know the difference. And I'm saying this because I know that the user is not part of your form. So obviously it's an external user which is using community portal. So the experience remains the same. External user collaboration. So if you, as I was saying, right, an individual can go into the, let's say, S3 or Google Drive or OneDrive, SharePoint, and easily share an entire record folder to a certain external user it's supposed to go to. So there are many ways you can collaborate because the files are ultimately stored in a document repository system like SharePoint, OneDrive, Google Drive. So there's so many ways already that you have flexibility already that you have to share it with external users. So that's one more advantage that you get. Internal team. So there's a way in XfilesPro where if you upload a file, then only you can see it by default, and then you can choose to share it to internal teams or community users or profiles of your choice. Let's say I upload a file and then I want to, show it to my Salesforce, like my manager, for example, or my colleagues, and I can individually share the file to a single, my colleague, or I can share it to the entire sales profile. And same stands for community users. Let's say you upload a file and you want a single file out of those five to be shared to community. That kind of internal collaboration is possible with this application, and much more. So now, let's say you have 100 files that you want to upload. You don't have to one by one upload them. Just select them all, 100, drag and drop, and done. It's moved to SharePoint, or it's moved to OneDrive, moved to Google Drive. So, or any external storage. So, folder management. Now, if you want to create some subfolders under a record folder as well to segregate the files, to have more clear, arrangement of files, all those things, that is supported as well with this application. And then, another thing, right? The files, even if it's migrated, archived into any external storage, you can see it from Salesforce. You don't have to, your users don't have to have the access to any external storage. They can preview the file, the entire Word document, PDF, Excel, everything could be previewed from Salesforce. They can download the file from Salesforce. So if you have a use case where you do not want users to go to SharePoint, OneDrive, Google Drive, S3, then you can make them stay in Salesforce and still do all the functionality, still see the file, still upload, still download, still create folders, right? And the final is folders slash file syncing, where let's say you're using a legacy system and you want, it to, now you want to move it to a SharePoint storage. So, or a OneDrive storage. Now you can move those files into your, let's say, S3 storage or OneDrive, and it can sync with the existing record within few seconds. That's how, we can easily sync a folder or a file with existing records of Salesforce. That being said, let's move to a live demo, which my colleague Sutirtha will be showing to you today. Over to you, Sutirtha.
Hey Vedant, thank you. Thank you for all the insights regarding XfilesPro. And hello everyone, I'll be sharing my screen to show you a quick demo on how the archiving works. So let me know once my screen is shared so that I can begin. Yeah, Vedant, can you confirm that?
Yeah, we can see this.
Okay, so for this webinar, I have created one record and I have already uploaded some files in the notes and attachment. That is the default file storage of Salesforce. And we also support the files, that is the native file storage of Salesforce. So these files can come from any third-party app which can generate those files, or any application like Conga, DocuSign, which is generating those files internally, right? And these are all consuming your Salesforce file storage. Now, since we need to archive those and reduce your Salesforce file storage, we have our archiving tool, that is XfilesPro. So this is where the XfilesPro comes in, and you can see if you click on utilities, we get the option for the export feature. So this export utility, using this export utility, you can actually archive these files. Now you can see here, if we can select the provider that we are supporting, since we told that we support multiple providers, and I'll be showing you this demo on SharePoint. So in this case, we have selecting SharePoint, and all the objects that are configured for SharePoint will come up here in this drop down. Now I'll be doing this for the account object. If I select account here, I get the option to give the filter criteria. So now this filter criteria is the main thing of the archiving, right? So here we can actually give any SQL queries which is supported, like created date this week, created more than 6 months ago, or 180 days, something like that. Or also we have multiple combinations of SQL, like suppose cases closed and cases greater than 6 months, right? So all these combinations can be used for the archiving process. And the best thing is we support both exporting files and attachment. So right now I'll be exporting files for this record from the Salesforce file storage to the external. So these are all in the notes and attachment. Let me go here and click on the export button. So you can see it will query all the files that are residing for this account object based on this filter criteria, and it found 5 files. So if I click on OK, it will start exporting these files one by one in the background. Now, this is something that I am showing you manually, and this entire process can be automated and scheduled like Vedant said. So you see all are the successfully exported. And if we go to SharePoint, and let me explain you the folder structure too. So this is the SharePoint site XfilesPro. This is the XfilesPro root folder, and here you see all the objects that you have configured. Since we exported for the account object, let me go to account, and you see a new record folder is also there. That is the webinar final, and it contains all the files that we just exported. So this is how it works. Your files are seamlessly moved to the external storage. Okay. And now the big question that we all have, what happened to the files in the notes and attachment? So let me go and refresh this page and show you. So once we exported all these files to the external storage, our app also on exporting deletes this file from the native storage. So your consumption of Salesforce file storage is reduced. Now, where are these files and how can I see these files from the record, right? So here we have our component of XfilesPro, which actually shows all the files that has been exported to the external storage by sharing a dynamic link. And with this dynamic link, you can actually preview these files right inside Salesforce, though these are actually residing outside. You also get the download option and the other options like template, like Vedant said, create folder, multiple things. Okay. And that being said is the archiving capability of XfilesPro. Apart from that, in the standard process, suppose you are not doing archiving, but you want instantaneous movement of the files whenever a user uploads the file, then you can directly come into this component. You can drag and drop the files, or you can just select the file like this, and this too will be exported instantaneously to the external storage. Okay. So this concludes our quick demo. I'll quickly move to one of the case study that we have for a huge logistic provider, which is one of the topmost logistic provider from the US. So in their case, they are using a third-party transportation management app called Revanova, which is generating lots of file day in, day out. And most of these files are like invoices or the load receipts. Okay. And when they were actually searching for an application to manage their Salesforce files externally, they came across XfilesPro, and they already had around 1.6 TB of files residing in the Salesforce file storage, which they wanted to offload. So that is where our archiving tool came into play and archived all their existing files to the external storage and reduced their Salesforce file storage cost by around 80%. And this was a scheduled process. So whenever it hits the filter criteria, those files get moved to the Amazon S3 as the external storage. Yeah. So over to you, Vedant, for the next case study.
All right, thank you, Sudhita. That was a wonderful demo and a wonderful use case that you have covered. I hope everybody joining in today would have got a really good idea, how the archiving looks like as a live demo. So having said that, let's talk about the case study two, where we're talking about a prestigious US university, which is an extensive use of community portal, and they wanted a file management, solution with their specific requirements. And they also wanted to use Google Drive specific team drive integration. So let's think of a scenario. This customer had a huge volume of files, 5 TB of files, which they wanted to get, not rid of because they cannot delete the files because of the compliance, the regulatory compliance. So they wanted to find a solution so that first of all, they do not have such a huge amount of files in their org, yet they can still see it at all points of time, right? So the reason why this customer has these many files because they were using community portal where students from different courses were supposed to come in, upload a file where it could be for printing, it could be for various things, and then it should go into the right folder structure. So that was a scenario, right? The students coming to a community portal and uploading a file. So there were a lot of students coming in, and then eventually the file storage increased to 5 TB. Now, that was the reason. Now, there are two requirements. One is to migrate, archive all the files, 5 TB files. The second one, to move the files in the right folder structure. So those two requirements were fulfilled with the help of XfilesPro, where using the archiving tool, which my colleague Sutirtha showed you, they were able to move those 5 TB of files into Google Drive, Team Drive. Second, they set up a folder structure where, as per the course of the student, it belonged to, the files went into that. If it belongs to engineering course, computer science course, it went into that. If it belonged to mechanical course, it went into that. So as per the course, the file went into. So both the requirements were fulfilled with the help of XfilesPro, one being the file migration or the archiving or the offloading, and the second being the course, the folder structure based on course. And going forward, they used our component, which my colleague Sutirtha showed, where a student uploaded the file directly into Google Team Drive. So their storage never increased. So this is the case study where they were able to fulfill all the requirements and also suffice their compliance. The third case study, which I wanted to talk to you about, is a Fortune 500 financial firm, which uses standard user files, and what they wanted was a centralized file system and a SharePoint integration. So this particular customer, right? They had a lot of files being generated from DocuSign. Now, this is an example. For your case, it could be a Conga, it could be any other application. But let's talk about for this specific use case. This customer had a file being generated by DocuSign, and they had a lot of files being generated every day. And what they wanted is, as soon as the file is getting generated, it should move to SharePoint. Yes, and the second thing what they wanted is, they had email to case as well. There were a lot of service agents, service customers who was creating a lot of cases. So every day is to send them emails with some kind of attachment. So now you might be wondering how, because what we showed so far is archiving, right? Where we move the files after as per the criteria. Now you might be wondering, how do we move the files immediately? How, as soon as the file comes into Salesforce, it's moved to, SharePoint. That's where we have a trigger-based archiving, where as soon as the file lands into files or notes and attachment, it could be Lightning or Classic, the files can be immediately moved into external storage, which is within 10-15 seconds. I mean, if you think about it, isn't that a great solution? Because as soon as the file lands, it's gone to SharePoint. So end user will never know the file was ever in Salesforce. It will always feel like to them that it was always in external storage. And this all process, right, a trigger archiving is a manual, is an automated process. It's a backend process, so nothing is manual. So that's how the use case of this customer we were able to suffice. Now that being said, I am gonna now open up, and that brings us to the end of the webinar, right? And I hope you guys got insightful information, insightful things what we mentioned or we explained. I hope it was very useful for you guys. And that being said, I am now going to open for questions. We have a less time, so we would be opening. If you guys have any questions, please drop into the Q&A box, and we would pick it up from there.
Hey Vedant, we have some already questions coming up. So one of the question from one of the attendees is, can you support movement of both the files from files and notes and attachment? Do you support that?
Yeah, so basically, as I mentioned, right, files could be coming into files, which is Salesforce Lightning, files area, or notes and attachment of a classic or content to document anywhere. It could be moved within a blink of an eye to external storage.
Okay, sounds good. So another questions, which is, do you provide the storage?
So the idea of our application is that we want a customer to have all the files with them. So that being said, we do not store any file with us. The file is completely with customers' own storage with them. And let's say after a few point of time, after a point after a few years, you might not use Salesforce or you might not use XfilesPro, and you would want to still have the files. And that's where we ensure the file is with the customer at all points of time. So yeah.
All right. So the next question that dropped in is, can you connect to multiple storages, like different teams use different storages in the same org?
Yes, yes. So we can we can keep different files in different storages as well. Yes, because let's say service team is using SharePoint and sales team is using Google Drive. So accounts and contact could be linked to Google Drive, and case and email could be linked to SharePoint. So we do have other questions that are coming up on the Q&A as well, which I wanted to pick up, which
Yeah.
is how is security coped? Can we control who can see the files in SharePoint after exporting? So on the SharePoint side, the file, if somebody can log into SharePoint, then that has to be controlled from the Salesforce, sorry, from the SharePoint admin. But it's also visible when you export a file. It's also visible in the Salesforce side as well. So in that component, whoever have access to the file or the record can see the files as well, can see the component as well. Having said that, there are some more ways where we can restrict the files. So I would love to, walk you through and understand what kind of security measures you want to keep or keep in place, and we can answer that question as well. Thank you for asking. So one more question that we have for customer community users, is it possible to control which files they can access? For example, we may not want them to see invoices, but we may want to see invoices, but not codes. Yes, and that's where I was mentioning that, we have a mode which is called a protected mode. Let's say an internal user uploads a file. By default, only he can see the file. Now, there is a share button on the right side of that file where he can share that file to a community user, to a group of community user, to entire community portal. So that's a choice. That's as per the requirement, he can share that file. So yes, it is possible to control which files can community access or which they cannot. So any other questions?
Yeah, Vedant, we have another question that we are moving from a legacy system to Salesforce. So how will they migrate those files and link it to Salesforce records?
That's pretty simple what we have. So the migration from legacy into, let's take an example of SharePoint, has to be taken care by the customer, where they have to move the files in the right folder structure, which could be an object folder, a record folder in the files. Once the structure has been achieved, once the file has been moved to SharePoint, we can, in a blink of an eye, link it with Salesforce. It's just a formula field that we have to write, and the files can be linked with existing records in Salesforce. So that's a pretty straightforward and a very interesting, easy method to do that.
Okay, I believe that answers that question. And lastly, since we're running out of time, we'll take the other questions, or the attendees can mail us to sales@xfilespro.com, like mentioned here. And finally, the pricing. So one of the attendees has one question: how is the pricing?
So I see a question where they mentioned we have a lot of community users. How is the pricing for community users and for general users? So the pricing is something which is per user per month model that we have. And then the pricing differs hugely when it comes to community or when it comes to internal users. So that depends on the amount of licenses. And the good news is that you don't have to buy licenses for all the users in your org. Whoever needs access to the files, to the component which my colleague Sutirtha showed, you need to have license just for that, those users. Having said that, the pricing for community is very less. Depending on the numbers, I would, probably you can get in touch with us and we can provide you a proper quote and proper, numbers around the pricing. But it differs hugely for a standard, and it's very, very less costly for community users. Now, that being said, I think you can please reach out to us at Sales at XfilesPro. We would love to answer. And if you have any further questions, we would love to walk you through a high level demo where we can specifically show a demo as per your use case, and then, discuss on the use cases and uh, talk about the next steps. So please reach out to us at sales@xfilespro.com, and then we can take it up from there.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Vedant, and thank you everyone, all the attendees for attending this webinar. I believe this is really insightful to you, and we'll be waiting for your queries at our email box. Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, have a great rest of the day ahead. Bye bye.
Bye.